What happens when the art of communication gets lost in a digital world? And what does it really mean to be professional in this current age of work? Trina Boos, founder of Boost Academy of Excellence, joins us to explore how awareness, empathy, and modern etiquette are shaping the next generation of leaders, from connecting people to building cultures that attract the best talent. This is about bringing humanity back to work and creating a playing field at work where people can communicate, collaborate, and build each other up. Join me, Lance Lafort, on Talent Thrives Here, the podcast where we interview people who are managing people. Today's guest, Trina Boos, believes professionalism isn't about rules, it's about awareness, empathy, and human connection. As founder of the Boost Academy of Excellence, she's helping organizations and professionals rebuild the human side of work, the kind that drives clarity, confidence, and trust. Trina, welcome to our show. It's great to have you here.
I'm so excited. It's such a pleasure to be here with you, Lance.
Great, lovely to have you. You've said the workplace has changed dramatically in the last few years, and I wouldn't disagree. I think everyone's sort of experiencing this, but not just in how we work, but how we interact. What are you seeing out
Mhm.
there right now?
I'm seeing there's a real struggle with social skills in the workplace and just understanding social norms and expectations. We have people that have been onboarded during COVID and are now coming into the workforce, into the physical workspace for their first times. And they are, anxious. They don't understand some of the things that we maybe would have just innately understood, having had those experiences and having had leaders to look at and model our behavior after. And so this is a struggle that I'm seeing a lot, but also it's not just for, juniors or Gen Zs. It's all of us. I think all of us are rusty and
Yeah.
we have just got out of habits of doing things. We've started to rely so much on technology for
Mm.
everything and having the screen in front of us and multitasking and so something's happened with how we listen to each other and how we are, we're just so accustomed to doing many things. We've got this up here, we got the phone down here. And
Yeah.
so just this idea of just actively listening is a struggle, I think, for everyone.
Yeah.
And I mean, the list goes on, but those are things that I see a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's powerful. We just before we got on the podcast, we were talking too about the whole work from home dynamic now, hybrid, and now who's in the office and who's not in today, and like that dynamic didn't exist. I don't know, a decade or so, or even just before COVID. It was more like
Mm.
90% of everybody was in the office all the time. So
Yeah.
the dynamic was fairly stable. There was a status quo, and now we have, there are companies pushing people back to work, and it's just I can't imagine. I work from home, but I can't imagine being in a lot of workplaces right now where there
Mhm.
isn't that kind of normal anymore. It's
Yeah.
in flux, right?
And think about it's not even just the workplace, it's those breaks, those in-between moments too that we don't have when we're working remote. And so people are maybe a little bit unsure how to handle the water cooler
Right.
conversations or the just like coffee with colleagues. Do they go out or are they just kind of hiding on the computer
Yeah.
during, whenever break time is happening or lunch? Um, I remember going out with colleagues for lunch and all the restaurants were full
Yeah.
and having those opportunities to just be with one another outside of that work context and
Yeah.
build relationships and understand how to have just small talk with each other
Right.
and then and see how that builds and grows into a meaningful relationship. And so that really can be challenging. I just actually I so I met a young gentleman recently who onboarded during COVID, and he recently just got laid off from his job. And he had been there a few years, and he had never met his team ever until he got laid
Wow.
off.
Wow.
And that was sort of, I actually, I felt so sad for him because the reason I met him was because I've been organizing this Gen Z coffee meetup to hear about their experiences in the workplace. Because, we get a lot of leaders that they're struggling with Gen Z and they're
Yeah.
struggling with how to communicate with them, how to understand them. And I'm training on this, this is the expectation of this is your expectation of what professional means in the workplace. But what about like why are they doing certain things? Let's understand what your expectations, how maybe you're imposing certain things on them that perhaps aren't sort of natural to them. And so maybe they need to understand why, but also why are they doing certain things that we might think are foreign and trying to really understand their experiences. And so
Yeah.
this gentleman came out, young guy, to share his experiences, and he said, quite honestly, the reason I'm here is just for some social interaction. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
become it's become a challenge.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of a couple things. One, I was downtown the other day, and there's a lot of retail closed. You know, in the underground
Mhm.
pass systems and stuff that used to be,
Yeah,
especially midday around lunch, just jammed. Right, food courts were stuffed with people,
yeah.
and there were hair salons and dry cleaners and all that stuff. And it seems like a shadow of its former self because I think the workforce
Hmm.
has not returned, not all of them, anyways. But it's
Yeah.
interesting what you talk about with that social interaction. Um, I think people working from home thought it was amazing at the beginning, and then some of them went, "Oh my goodness, I'm really lonely."
Yeah.
This is like a little bit of like I'm in my own little cubicle all day alone, and there's no one over the cubicle to even talk to because me and the cat or me and the dog. Um,
Hmm.
but I,
Yeah.
I wanted to sort of pivot for a second. You mentioned something to me at one point about the blind spot phenomenon. I want to just tell our listeners about that because I think that's
Yeah.
quite powerful.
So I think we're very quick to look at people and their behavior and say, oh my gosh, can you believe they did that? And you make a judgment call on their character, that they are kind of an a-hole. They did this thing. How rude they must be.
Right.
And then if if you do the same behavior, you will often have a reason to justify why you did the thing, right?
Yeah.
And so you're not the a-hole or you're not being rude. You just had to do the thing because, well, circumstance led you to have to do that, such as checking your phone at a particular time in the presence of someone who's talking to you, for example. Um, and so there's this thing I always say around just etiquette in general, which is you don't know what you don't know until somebody shows you that,
Yeah.
hey, like yesterday I was at this mentorship event with a whole bunch of immigrant newcomers to Canada, and we're talking about business card etiquette.
Mm.
And I was explaining to them, okay, so this is how often people will exchange a business card. And then this is actually how to do it in a way that has people feel like you're considering them. And
Right.
it's like night and day. Like suddenly, all of a sudden, you're like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this the whole time. And that's how it appears, right?
Right.
So
Right.
you don't know what you don't know until someone shows you. And then you're like, oh, uh-huh, I understand now why this is important, even though it's just such a subtle thing.
Yeah.
And so, I also went to this networking event with a group of entrepreneurs, and two of them were sitting right beside me with like food in their mouths, talking, and knives and forks flailing all around. And of course, people probably notice, but they're not going to say anything because, well, you're a senior, you're a business owner, you have experience that you're not, we don't want people to feel uncomfortable. So you won't do that. But if somebody were to be aware of maybe what they're doing and how that might come across, you would realize, oh, okay, yeah. But you might see it in someone else and think, oh, that was maybe rude or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So I think that's what I'm referring to with this blind spot phenomenon.
yeah. And that's a funny one about eating. It's like, yeah, and I'm sure you could teach a whole thing just on that.
Oh, wouldn't
You
you
know,
know? I do.
yeah, right.
I do.
So, but it's great, because again, you're going to end up at some point eating with coworkers or a supervisor, or somebody,
Yeah.
and that's not something everyone thinks about. Oh, I got to get trained on that. Certainly
Yeah.
colleges don't teach that, right? And I can think of one college that had this fantastic thing where their graduates had to do several weeks of like right at the end of the program, shaking hands, making eye
Yeah.
contact, making
Yeah.
sure that they had Tic Tacs or gum for their breath. Like there was, but it was graduation season. There were, I don't know, I think I was bumping into 6 or 8 colleges. This
Hmm.
one college, their graduates stood way out of the pack.
Oh,
They all
wow.
had business cards ready. They all had
Yes.
a very professional handshake. They
Yes.
asked engaging questions. And I'm like, what is in the water over there? So I started talking with one of the instructors. He said, oh, no, that's deliberate. Like we spent several weeks
Yes. I
polishing them
love
up
that.
for this mo. Yeah, it was fantastic.
What do you know what
So
school that was?
yeah, I'll tell you offline. I don't
Oh,
want
yeah.
to. The other ones will be after me. Hey, how come you gave them a point? Anyways, but yeah,
That's
it was
excellent.
it was it made a very very noticeable difference, like huge,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
so that was years ago, but it sticks in my memory like yesterday because I can still remember these young people just like professionally engaging with recruiters and other studios that were looking to hire them and employers. And I
Hmm.
thought, well, what a leg up, they even some of them had scripts ready to
Yeah.
say, and
That
you
is
could see them kind of
excellent.
mentally go through their head, like, oh, the third question looks like this, but
Mhm.
my hat was off to them because other students we saw were like wallflowers, just panicked about the whole exercise. So
You're reminding me. So I used to run a mentorship program for students that were graduating from university and college, and we would partner with companies of all sizes. We had at one point we had Google and Amazon sponsor it, among others. And so what we would do is we would take them through an entire year of training. We would interview them. We would coach them on like everybody had to have a portfolio, whether they were a creative
mm,
or in business. They all had to have something that they would be able to present, some online presence where they could send to people and follow up with something. And they needed to prepare for this dinner. It was all over a dinner. They needed to prepare. We talked through conversation. We explained to them how to ask the right questions and show that you're engaged and all of those things. It is so true. And so those people that went through that program, people would say they were so impressive because they
right,
were very well prepared, right? I
yeah.
totally agree. That is so important.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. Well, let's dig into Boost Academy of Excellence. What are you focused on right now? Because I know this is a fairly new business for you, but you've had other businesses in the past. So what's the prime focus right now, or the 2 or 3 avenues that you're pursuing with Boost Academy?
Yeah. So, I mean, I launched the business in late summer and have been working on doing workshops, individual one-to-one coaching as well for people who need some career advice on how to kind of elevate their skill set, their presence, and work through sort of interview scenarios and things like that, and have been doing corporate training. So organizations that are looking for just kind of looking at how to reward people that have been at the company for a certain period of time, and they're looking to kind of get them ready for leadership positions. So a lot of that, and I'm launching a cohort in early 2026, which will be a 10-week long program for people within different industries to do my 8 modules together. So I'll have 8 weeks of content and 2 weeks of group coaching. So that is going to be really cool. So if anyone's interested, I'm piloting that program in the new year. And I
Very
just launched a
cool.
podcast, so called Boosted.
Yeah, yeah, and I've heard the couple first episodes. It's fantastic, and
Thank
short
you.
and sweet and packed full of great content. So I definitely would
Yeah,
recommend if people haven't found you on your
thank you.
podcast, they should.
And
So
another
great.
thing
Yeah,
that
go ahead.
that I'm doing right now is we talked about dining etiquette. So holidays are coming up. So doing dining etiquette workshops for people to prepare them for the holidays.
Yeah,
And so that's always fun. You know, people are going to be doing client entertainment and work functions and different things like that. And again, you don't know what you don't know. And so I'm trying to make it really fun and engaging and have, food form a big part of the experience. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And it's again, as I mentioned earlier, I think it's untapped. I think it's a really good thing to do. I can think of so many times I've either eaten with my team or a boss. And now I'm replaying through my head. Oh, what did I do? Did that go well? Did they see me? And I would think of like don't eat burritos in front of strangers, right? Like there's certain foods that are super messy. I'd be like, nah,
Uh,
that's not a good one to start with. Not the first time. Um, so let me just dig back a little bit because I know before Boost Academy of Excellence, you also had Boost Agents, a recruitment agency. And
yeah.
I think it became fairly known well for its incredible culture that you and your team put together. So I'm wondering if you could tell us some of your proudest moments of running your recruiting agency in the past.
Oh, wow. You're taking me back. So Boost was a joy, and I have two Boosts, Boost Agents, Boost Academy of Excellence. So Boost Agents started just focusing on marketing and creative recruitment. That's what we did. And as a startup, we were lean and mean and very focused on quality. But in doing that, we started to realize there are a lot of things that we can do to improve how people engage with us. And so we looked at who are our customers? Well, yes, we have clients, but we also have candidates, and we can't have one without the other. And we have to really look at all of the ways that we're engaging with all of them in order to improve our offering. So we did a whole customer experience, candidate experience, sort of mapping out of all of the touch points that people had with our organization. And this was led by everyone in the organ. Like it was like there was one or two that really helped lead it, but everybody was involved in it, basically improving all of these touch points, and everyone had to be because each person was responsible for one aspect or a certain aspect of this, project. So one small thing would be the phone system and what is the experience people have when they call the company versus, when they're getting feedback delivered to them, and clients, how are we engaging with them from the first point of discussion all the way through to the close and then beyond. And so because our whole team was so involved in improving this and really owning it all together, it created this really unique culture where people were just so passionate about doing good work. And so what started to happen is whenever we were looking for new employees, I often would engage my core team members to help with that process. And it was really great to do that because they were able to, like, that passion really came through when people would interview. And sometimes it'd be candidates coming maybe for some other jobs, and then they'd see that and then they'd want to join because, like, it was addictive. You'd be there, you're like, oh my goodness, I want this,
That's
just
great.
because the vision was so strong and the passion was there.
Yeah.
So it's very unique.
Yeah, no, very good. That's amazing, and it's fantastic when you can build that culture and have the employees buy in and want to be part of it too. It's so powerful,
Hmm.
right? So,
Yeah.
it sort of triggered some old agencies that I worked in where it was more like Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross, like who's got the leads? It's very boiler room kind of sales pitch and things like that. Where, yeah, no, so it sounds like you had the diverse end of the other end of the spectrum where it was
Yeah.
supportive and people really cared about what they were doing holistically.
Yeah.
So fantastic.
They came up with this tagline, "Your friendly neighborhood headhunters."
Yeah,
So we just
yeah,
kept it because you know what? It kind of worked. But
yeah.
yeah.
No, it's fantastic. So there's
Yeah.
a couple other notes I want to hit before we wrap soon. One was you mentioned that a professor said something to you early in your life, and it really helped change the way you look at things. I wonder if you could tell me and tell our listeners that story.
Sure. Yeah. So I went to Sheridan College, studied advertising, and the professor said, he's like, it's not what you know often in this industry, it's who you know. And and someone that I've recently met added to that, and she said it's actually who knows you, which is
Yeah,
so cool. So
right.
anyway, I ended up I ended up launching a website that was basically an online, it was like a Yahoo community back in the day for all the Sheridan grads. And I was looking for a job. So I took it out to all the companies I wanted to work for, music labels, advertising agencies, consumer packaged goods companies, you name it. And we started to get HR to come on board, marketing directors to come on board, and they started to really like mentor the students. And
Yeah.
then suddenly they all wanted events. So we started these events and we had our first one, 80 people, which then grew to 100, to 150, to
Wow.
300. And through that, that's when I ended up getting approached by a recruiter to work in recruiting.
Yeah.
And so became very known as a connector of people.
Yeah.
And through all of that, it was actually a CEO of one of a global ad agency who said to me, Trina, she said, you need to offer, this was now when I had Boost agents and I was recruiting and running my own firm. She said, you need to offer something that helps my junior staff to not embarrass us. She said they were sending emails that were just, not the right tone to their
Yeah.
clients. They were entertaining clients over dinner and didn't understand how to do that properly,
Right.
professionally. And she even referenced the cutlery use.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this idea just got planted in my head. And then it was many years later, it was looking at COVID and the impact of COVID on all of us and on, especially young professionals coming into the workforce. And really started to think, what is this? And again, this notion of connecting and community always has been a common thread in my career. But in this case, with this now doing training to help professionals basically get polished and promoted, that is the concept of Boost Academy of Excellence. It also is about connecting. It's about connecting with people through, this notion of actively listening
Yeah.
and considering others.
That's fantastic. I love that. It's like a through line. I really like the connections, like both purpose and practice, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot deeper, I think, than people realize sometimes.
Mhm.
Look, we're going to wrap. I really love chatting with you, and I'm hoping we can do it again at some point. If people want to find you, obviously LinkedIn. Your new website is www.boostacademyofexcellence.com. Are those the best ways of finding you?
Yeah, you can also find me on Instagram at Boost Academy of Excellence or the podcast. You can find anywhere you listen to a podcast. It's called Boosted from Polished from what is it? From Unpolished to Promoted.
Excellent. Great, great. And if you could leave our listeners with one idea, one skill or mindset shift that would help them thrive in their work, what would it be?
I really think it is about always considering others and the impact that you have on other people in your interactions. And I really think it's through, actively listening to them and treating them with respect, dignity, honesty, and consideration.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That's fantastic. I will wrap with that, and hopefully we'll see you somewhere soon. And if anyone loves our podcast, Talent Thrives Here, please subscribe, recommend it to others, follow, share, and we look forward to another episode soon with professionals working with other professionals. Thanks again, Trina. Lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you, Lance. It was a lot of fun.